Hello. When I was about 4 years old, I realised that my older siblings, my brother and sister, were getting something from my parents that I didn't get. And that didn't seem fair. So I went to them and I explained the situation, and they offered to give me 3 old pence a week on the understanding that this would rise as I got older. And that seemed like a reasonable deal, so I accepted. And sure enough, they fairly reliably gave me my 3 pence. And I was 4 years old. I didn't really need money. I knew it was a good thing to have, but I didn't really have anything to do with it. My parents bought me all the essentials, clothes, food, that kind of stuff. And there was always Christmas and birthdays and Easter for the big stuff. Uh, some of my relatives could be relied on to slip me the odd coin as well. And I didn't really need money, I didn't spend money. So consequently, I put my 3 pence in a little tin box, money box that I had. And by the time it was time, we were due to go on our annual holidays, which was 2 weeks down in Bournemouth at Nan's house. I accumulated a few shillings, so I was able to take it with me, and I used the money to buy those essential seaside things like a bucket and spade and little flags on a stick, so that if you made a sandcastle, you could decorate it properly. Anyway, as time went by, my pocket money rose, and it went 6 pence, 9 pence, a shilling, 1 and 6, 2 shillings. By the time I was about 10, I was getting 2 and 6 a week, half a crown, which was then the largest coin in circulation, the largest denomination coin in circulation. There were crowns, of course, but they were reserved for commemorative purposes like the death of Churchill or the coronation of a queen or something of that sort. They weren't spending money, they were memorial medals, really. But half a crown was quite a substantial little sum of money. The prices have changed a lot. It's difficult to compare exactly, but you could probably buy a gallon of petrol or 2 pints of beer or something of that sort with it. It was somewhere in value between a £2 coin now and a £5 note. And it was commonly called half a crown or 2 and 6. It was also referred to as 2 and a kick, and sometimes it was called half a dollar, although I think the exchange rate that referred to was sometime before the Second World War. Anyway, 2 and 6 wasn't really enough. I mean, in the words of the great Mike Tyson, you can always use another dollar. And so it was with me. At 4, I could put the money away and save it and never spend it. But at 10, I could never get enough of the stuff. I had needs. And there were a number of ways I tried to raise some extra money. There were the traditional methods. For example, we could beg for a penny for the guy. Firework night, as it's most usually called now, was in fact called Guy Fawkes Night in those days, and it celebrated the foiling of a plot by Guido Fawkes and a number of his co-conspirators to blow up Parliament with King James I in it and restore the Catholic monarchy, I suppose. The real Guy Fawkes plot was foiled, and Guy Fawkes was horribly tortured and very painfully executed. But in order to demonstrate our loyalty to the crown and our abhorrence of Catholicism, it was common for people to make an effigy of Guy Fawkes and to burn it on a bonfire on the 5th of November. We had the mnemonic, remember the 5th of November. And that was the date when the plot was foiled. Now, the Guy Fawkes scam, the racket, was that sometime in October, you could make a guy, which was usually some old pajamas stuffed with newspaper and a paper bag for a head, or sometimes a balloon with the features drawn onto it. And you could take this effigy down to the high street with a couple of mates, and every passerby you could accost and ask for a penny for the guy. Supposedly you were going to spend this money on fireworks. And in those days, in fact, you could, as a 10-year-old, I could go to a shop and buy explosives over the counter. They put a stop to that soon afterwards, but at the time you could. And but of course some of that money would find its way into your pocket. But as they say, well, if you ask for a penny, chances are you'll get a penny. And so it was quite laborious, and eventually it added up. You had some money. But the old expression, many a mickle makes a muckle. But you need an awful lot of mickles to make any real difference. And also it was seasonal. You could really only do it at the end of October and the beginning of November. The rest of the year, you couldn't. Another thing, which was also seasonal, was on the run-up to Christmas. You could go out carol singing, which really meant that you'd go out, usually in a little group of three or four children, young people, and knock on someone's door, and when they answered, you'd burst into some sort of carol, some Christmas carol like "We Three Kings of Orient Are," or "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," or something like that. But and quite often people would give you some money. Really, they'd give you money to go away, because that was the news. You never had to learn the second verse of the carol, because nobody ever really wanted to hear it. And some people would answer the door and say, "Bugger off, bugger off the lot of you." Anyway, like I said, that was seasonal, and it wasn't really very lucrative. It wasn't really me. Another thing you could do, which went all year round, was you could collect soda bottles and beer bottles, discarded bottles, which had a deposit on them. In those days, that before recycling, we did a lot of recycling, and you could take a beer bottle back to the shop, back to any shop really, that sold that kind of beer, and you get a deposit. And it might be threepence a bottle or something like that. It was useful amount. If you've found a few bottles, soda bottles, Coke bottles, beer bottles, you could take them back to the shop and get the deposit back on them. That was quite a worthwhile thing to do. I tried washing cars. That's a dead end job, really. Nobody wanted to pay you a proper price for washing their car. They was trying to fob you off with a couple of shillings or something like that. And it's really hard work. I cleaned my car yesterday and I was exhausted at the end of it. And I could go up the car wash and probably get a car wash for like £10 to £15, a hand car wash. So that's what it's worth. But no, people, you're a kid, so they just want to pay you kids money. The other thing I used to do when I got a little bit older, like 13 or so, you could go up to the golf course, the local golf course, on a Saturday morning and hang around and ask people if they wanted a caddy. And a caddy was somebody who had to carry the clubs round for a good caddy would know how to know the course and help select clubs and things like that. You had to carry the clubs round, and an average golf game took about 2.5, 3 hours, and you'd maybe have to cover 4 or 5 miles. So it was quite hard work, really. But it was in the open air, and it was fun. Of course, in those days, golf clubs were heavier. I mean, I picked up a wooden club, a driver, the other day. It was light as a feather. Carbon fibre, aluminium, stuff like that. In those days, woods were made of wood and irons were made of iron, and they could weigh quite a few pounds. And in those days as well, of course, nobody had a trolley. Trolleys hadn't really arrived yet in Britain. They probably had them in America, but not in Britain. And golf carts didn't exist. So anyway, I used to go there on a Saturday morning with a friend of mine, and we used to hang around. Very often I would caddy for my Uncle Ernie, who used to play golf every Saturday morning with his mates. And it was quite a good number, really. I don't think it paid very much. It was discretionary, and Uncle Eddie wasn't the most generous man in the world, but he paid the going rates, and it was good to but it's a good memory of him I have. Well, 13 by the age of 14, of course, you're old enough for a proper Saturday job, and I've talked to you about my time at Woolworths, where I worked for a while, which was a very good Saturday job and holiday job, and Blandford Press as well, where I did some work. But I've also had a Saturday job in a library, and I hated that. I really hated it. It was like, well, most books seem to come from the bottom shelf, and so your job as a Saturday boy was basically filing. They give you a trolley full of books, and you had to put them back on the shelf. And I hate filing. I hated filing then. I hate it now. anyway, and also the other staff in the library, the ones I came across anyway, were I suppose you would describe them as intellectual snobs. I wasn't really made of the right sort of stuff for that. I barely read a book. And they'd read loads of books, and they're sort of, I don't know, they had this sort of superior attitude, which made me feel rather uncomfortable, I have to say. Anyway, that was what I did until I was old enough to get a proper Saturday job at Woolworths and earn some real money. Anyway, I'll see you later.